Hello, so welcome back to the English Law channel. Just have to distinguish the videos by wearing a silly hat or something like that once in a while. Alright, so carrying on with liability for omissions. Now, there's sometimes liability for the acts of third parties. So usually there's no duty of care to prevent third parties from causing harm to others, by even doing so intentionally. But there is, if there's an existing relationship between the wrongdoer, which involves a level of control or a duty of care, a duty of care may be found. The issue is in respect of liability of the acts of third parties that is closely connected to issues about the context of liability for omissions. So the question to ask is, does a relationship of control exist between the defendant and the third party? A leading case on this one is Home Office and Dorset Yacht Company Limited, 1970. So there's a Borstal, we now call it a Young Offenders Institute, and the boys who've been sent there, the petty criminals, they escaped from the Borstal in the middle of the night, and the three officers in charge were allegedly fast a kip, and they shouldn't have been bagging Z's, they should have been vigilant to prevent the boys getting out. But because of their lack of vigilance, the young offenders escaped. So the escapees, they went on onto a yacht and they vandalised it, and the plaintiff's yacht was moored close by. So the Home Office said it would go against public policy to hold the Home Office or its officers liable to the member of the public for the acts of a third party being the Borstal boys. But the Borstal officers had failed to restrain these youths. So this was an issue of omission, of not doing something, of not controlling them. So the prison authorities had not forfended the boys getting out in the wee hours because the officers were supposedly slumbering when they should have been wakeful. So a majority in the House of Lords found that there was a duty of care, because the relationship between the Home Office and the Borstal boys, the Home Office was controlling the Borstal officers, and the Borstal officers, their key duty is to prevent the escape of these young tearaways. The delinquents had got out and they caused foreseeable harm. There was a relationship between the Home Office and the yacht owners, and that was indeed proximate, therefore a duty of care arose. The Borstal boys were supposed to be under control of the officers, and so control imports responsibility. Therefore, the Home Office was found to be liable. There's Carmarthenshire County Council against Lewis, 1955, an appellate court case, when a little boy ran over his nursery premises onto a busy road. People swerved to avoid him, leading to an accident. So the House of Lords have said that there was a responsibility of parents and educators for the conduct of children, and the defendants are on a duty of care to take reasonable steps to prevent the child imperiling others. Just reasonable steps. You can't guarantee they'll never cause harm to others. You can't do something. You have to do something extreme to prevent it, like chaining them up so they can't run across the road. But do whatever's reasonable to prevent a toddler running out. It's foreseeable if the child dashes onto the road, people are going to swerve and brake, and that can cause damage because they're desperately trying to avert killing the child. But that could cause injury to the driver, to the people in the car, the passengers. Remember, no seatbelts in those days. In Rabone against Pennine Care NHS Foundation Trust 2012, the Supreme Court said there's a positive duty was owed to a patient who was known to be a suicide risk. And the hospital trust was therefore liable to the young patient, permitting the patient to go home against the wishes of her parents. She'd previously tried to take her own life. This was based on Article 2 of the European Convention on Human Rights. Everyone has a right to life, and that must be protected by law. So the authorities obviously assumed care for her to try and prevent her committing suicide, and they had been negligent in that duty. They failed to take reasonable steps to prevent her, as in they let her out of their superintendents. So what is this duty? So once this is found that the defendant has a positive duty of care towards the claimants, we have to decide what this duty actually is. In Smith against Littlewoods Organisation, 1986, an appellate court case, the defendants bought a cinema which was empty, and they did nothing with for it a month. They were going to knock it down. They're going to redevelop the site as a supermarket. But during this time, they knew that people were breaking into it very frequently, juvenile delinquents, and so contractors were hired by Littlewoods. They knew about the vandals, but neither defendant nor the police were told about them. So then some vandals committed arson. The fire spread and it damaged the plaintiff's property, which was close by. So the vandals wouldn't be worth suing. They're people of straw, you could take every penny that they had, and it would not cover the damage at all. So therefore, it was decided to sue the defendants because the defendants had failed to take any action to stop the vandals from accessing this derelict cinema premises. The plaintiff's claim was defeated. Lord Gough said this is pure omission, and there's no general duty of care to stop a third party causing damage. But he said that liability can arise where the defendant negligently causes or permits a created source of danger, and it is reasonably foreseeable the third parties may intervene. Close quotation. He just said that on the facts that wasn't the case here. So the content of the duty, if it arises, is this. The risk has to be weighed against what you would need to do to forfend the risk. Posting 24-hour guard over a property, that might be excessive and that might be too expensive. So we don't want to impose something which is too onerous. In Mitchell and Glasgow City Council 2009, the House of Lords said there was liability for the criminous act of a third party, but this could only arise if the person was under a duty of care by their words or behaviour, had assumed responsibility for the person or property that was jeopardised. The issue was whether the local authority had assumed that positive duty of care to protect one of the social housing tenants, because there was a lengthy vendetta against this person of verbal abuse, other abuse, threats, and the person was indeed murdered in the end by a fellow tenant. So the local authority had been apprised of the victim's neighbour might commit an act of violence. They'd been informed this was the case, and they said that he risked being evicted, but there was the necessary element of relationship of duty that was missing. It wouldn't be fair, just, and unreasonable to impose this on the public authority, because they already had to deal with a very serious problem of housing people, of antisocial behaviour amongst many of their tenants. And what are you to do? Throw them out on the street? And that wouldn't necessarily prevent the murder. And a lot of tenants would be evicted, therefore, and that's very difficult because they say, we've got our rights, you can't evict me on the basis that I might commit murder. And it is very legally difficult to evict people. It requires a lot of very, very bad behaviour, and that causes other social problems if you're increasing homelessness, when it's precisely the council's duty to house people. And the people who need social housing are often people with serious psychological difficulties, personality disorders, sociopathic sort of people, drug addicts, alcoholics, the long-term unemployed, the subclinically insane. The rather important case about this, Banque Financière de la Cité Société Anonyme against Westgate Insurance Company 1991, or Ornid Reeves against Commissioner of Police of the Metropolis 2000. So the Metropolitan Police, it's the London Police, but it's the police of the Metropolis, to give it its full name. The Metropolis, the big city, London. The Met, we call it for short. Thanks for watching.